All right. Well, welcome to Roots of Reality Experiences. I'm joined by Paul Durham, who is the lead singer of the rock band Black Lab, which is known for their critically acclaimed debut album, Your Body Above Me, as well as their song Learn to Crawl from the Spider-Man soundtrack. So, Paul, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, man.
When did you first get interested in music?
Interested in music. Das ist, ¿y tú? Um, that's what Rosario. She takes care of me when I need Sterling.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. Okay, I'm ready. There's some mezcal in me.
There you go.
I just have always sung a lot
Okay.
around the house. I used to have a lawn mowing business. I used to have like 30 lawns a week that I mowed, and I just sung behind the lawnmower all day long. When I was in like ninth grade, I sang in two church choirs, even though I hated church and never went to the church. I just negotiated with the Methodists and the Baptists that I would come, I would sing, and then I would leave,
Wow.
which looking back seems completely insane. But I was just, yeah, it's just what I did. And then in high school, I was skateboard. I did a lot of skateboarding. I dislocated my shoulder. I was in a sling. Then I got on a half pipe in the sling. I dislocated my shoulder again. And then I decided, okay, I need some kind of hobby. I need some kind of other thing I can do. And the guitar was kind of perfect because I could kind of just put my arm in the sling over the guitar and strum. And so I just learned, my friend taught me Knock on Heaven's Door. And then I knew four chords. So I just started writing. So
So, was there anyone in your family that was interested in music? I mean, what made you have the thought, like, oh, I enjoy singing?
both my parents are singers. Both
Okay.
my parents did tons and tons of singing when they were in school. My dad has an incredible voice. Incredible. He can go up as high as a woman, but full male tenor.
Wow.
So he was singing all the time. My brother's like a violin prodigy. Um, so yeah, it was just music all
Yeah.
the time. Ironically, it was not rock and roll music. My dad is a conspiracy theorist, addict, and so he thought that rock and roll was like a conspiracy of the British
Wow.
to recolonize America. Like they were going to send us weed and the Beatles, and somehow they were going to be able to conquer us.
Wow.
Not sure, not totally clear on the specifics, but we were not allowed. There was no rock and roll in our house. It was all opera and folk music and Olivia Newton-John, which
Okay.
very astutely he understood was not, in fact, rock and roll. And then when I was in eighth grade, they invented the Walkman,
Yeah.
and I got some headphones, and then I got like Diver Down and the AC/DC record Back in Black, and then that was that.
Did you have to like hide your interest in rock music then from your father?
I think he could hear it
Okay.
through the headphones, and one day he like barked at me because I was listening to rock and roll on my headphones, but I don't know. I think I was 14 and uh I think he figured there was nothing really he could do about it.
Okay.
So
Lost cause. Okay.
yeah, I was pretty independent at 14. I was kind
Yeah.
of like, who are you? What? I don't know you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes
So
sense.
but
So,
yeah.
I remember reading that, when you were, I guess you're probably young adult at this time or something, but you were like, while you were pursuing a career as a professional musician, you were a substitute teacher. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I got out of college and realized I wanted to be a musician. I was living in Emeryville in Oakland, south of Oakland, where the IKEA is. If you've ever been in the IKEA, at the IKEA in the Bay Area, I was living in an abandoned building. It was actually a condemned building right across the railroad tracks that a bunch of artists had taken over, and they couldn't kick them out because of the residency laws in California. So they had moved into this condemned building, and
What?
then they couldn't kick them out because they were living there, right? And then dudes started literally renting shit out. So like I was renting a little tiny room under the stairs in the Bay Area for $50 a month. It was killer. But I still needed to make money. And so I started substitute teaching in Oakland, and I didn't have a car. I would just get on a bus and
Okay.
head south, and all the white people would get off the bus at some point, and
Yep.
then it would be all black people and me going to some school in West Oakland that needed a substitute teacher. And then I would go in the school and hang out with little black kids all day. It was awesome. It was a really good job. It paid really well. I only worked
Yeah.
2 or 3 days a week. It's just back in the day when you could work a good job, 2 or 3 days a week. I mean, I didn't have a car and I lived under a stairway in a condemned warehouse. So there is that. But, I was just completely focused on
Yeah.
music. I was working 60 hours a week on music, and I just needed some other thing I could go and do and make money at.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty wild. I don't think I've heard something like that before. That's quite unique. I mean, but I suppose
It's a
that's kind
naughty
of like
ship.
I feel like that's kind of like a an artist or musician type of way of life almost when you're first starting out. Like you're willing to do almost anything
Yeah.
to
Dude,
pursue
I would have done
your
anything.
goal.
I would have
Yeah.
sold drugs. I would have done anything. I just didn't know how to sell drugs. So, uh, you know,
Couldn't
I
do
was
that
from
one.
Idaho, man. I was from Idaho. So, yeah, I would have done anything.
So like what I'm
Uh,
curious, I think one of the fascinating things about people in general is when, they're pursuing a goal in life where I feel like almost in the pursuit of that goal, they're most like the most free they feel because it's kind of like you have nothing to lose, but you're just trying to achieve something. What was your mentality at that point in time about this pursuit of a musical career?
that's a good question. Um, I think I was just a very strange combination of profoundly insecure. Like I just felt like this very choir boy background. I went to school on an opera scholarship, which I bailed out of, but that's the kind of voice I had. I think I was pretty convinced that there was no place for me in rock music, you
Okay.
know, and the people that I worked with, the team that I built around me were like very much, no, man, you have a great voice and, you do interesting things with it. So I think I was both very insecure and in my, I mean, ironically, I was insecure in my musical talent, but I was very secure in my intellectual talent and my ability to do business and to network and to create momentum. So I just thought, I'm just going to work everybody else into the ground.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that I'm not very good, I'm just going to crush everybody else with my willingness to work.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it was pretty smart because, you know, like I'm not Jeff Buckley. I'm not one of these like brilliant dudes. So, but my capacity for work and more importantly, my motivation. I was super, super, super motivated, you
Yeah.
know. And I work with young people. I mentor young artists, and I say to them, I say, like, here's the thing: you have wealthy parents, or you have upper middle class parents.
Hmm.
You have a safety net. Your parents pay your car insurance. You don't have to become successful
Yeah.
at this art form that you're passionate about. You have things you can fall back on. For me, I had nothing. My parents are poor. I put myself through college. I loaned my dad during college. I gave him some of my student loan money.
Wow. Okay.
Um, like, uh, I had nothing And it was either music or I knew that I was going to end up teaching in a school, getting a graduate school degree, going and working in an office, doing something that I hated.
Yeah.
So it was either this thing that I loved or it was a shitty life. And there was no alternative, you know? And so for me, I woke up every day with like fire in my belly because I was not going to live a life, you know. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was very angry. I was very arrogant. And so I was just gonna overcome whatever I had to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have much doubt about like that you were going to eventually make it? Or were you pretty certain like no matter what it happens, you're gonna figure it out?
I knew that no matter what happened, I
Yeah.
was gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, no one in my family had ever been to college, and I went to one of the best liberal arts schools in the country.
Yeah.
I graduated cum laude. Like I knew that if I put my will against something, nothing could stand in my way. I knew that. So that was a big help. That was a big help. The downside is I didn't really trust myself musically. I didn't really have a lot of faith in my talents musically. So I was always like, oh, I have to earn my way. I have to earn my way through work and through marketing and through hustle rather than just being like, I just need to write the right song. Like it's a lot easier if you just write the right song. If you write the right song, you make the right recording, that recording will go out and do all the work in the world for you. You meet the right collaborator, uh, that relationship will go out and do all that work for you. So I wish I had put more attention on my collaborations and on writing. I wish I'd just written more songs, instead of the other way around. But how it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how often like it is just like there's so many people that just had like one super hit and it carries them their entire career.
Yeah.
And they never have to do
Yeah.
anything
They got
again.
lucky. They got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's great when you get lucky. Um, but the people who have like careers are the people who like really, really, really built their craft
Yeah.
over a long period of deep uh personal work, either with a band, like REM, or on their own as a producer, or on their own as a songwriter, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't
No,
know.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So how did Black Lab form then? What was the situation around that?
So I had this band. We were working with this guy. He was like a jazz producer. He was a high level jazz producer. I don't know why we were working with him. I just kind of like was dragged along in these currents of relationships that I'd made in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I was from Idaho, so it was really, really, I didn't understand how to like function in a city really. And I had this band, and it was a kind of an acoustic based band with jazz players. And it just like I I liked a lot of things about it, but it didn't really fit the style of my voice. Like I have this big blasting voice and I need a big machine around my voice. That's how I always felt. So it was always very frustrating. And we were going to get signed. We had a lot of record labels interested in us, and my manager blew it up, thank God. And then I just let everybody go. We got our guitar player a job with Chris Isaac. He went off and played with Chris Isaac. And then a guy from Geffen called me and said, "Hey, I'm an A&R guy from Geffen. I hated your band. I hated your manager, but I love your songs. So,
Wow.
would you like to fly out to Atlanta and make a demo with me?" So I was like, "Yeah." So I flew to Atlanta. I made a demo. He's like, "Cool. I want to give you a record deal." I was like, "That sounds awesome." This was back in I don't know, 90 95, when if you didn't have a record deal, you couldn't It take you 15 years of touring to kind of reach any kind of wide audience, right?
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I had a major label record deal with the most prestigious label in the business, Geffen Records, home of Nirvana, home of Sonic Youth. Counting Crows had just signed with them. So I had this like huge golden ticket in my back pocket, and I was able to just go around and kind of poach the best musicians in the Bay Area. I like, got Michael Urbano. I stole him from Sheryl Crow. And I just was like, I want the best, hardest hitting, trippiest guys that I can get. And Jeff Stanfield, the bass player, was kind of like my partner in that. He was like, "Yeah, man, let's just be ambitious." So we got the best players we could get, and we just yeah, we just crushed everybody. No one
Yeah.
wanted to tour with us because they would play a show and they'd be like, "Oh shit, tell our manager we cannot stay with them," because my band was just absolutely monstrous. So
But it's so cool because it's like, I mean, I guess one of the cool things about being in that position where you're kind of putting together a team is it's like a it's like a sports team. You're like recruiting
yeah,
people and signing people, and that's
yeah,
exciting and fun. And
yeah. Yeah, and people were mad at me for like poaching players from other bands, but it's
yeah,
like, how do you think the Beatles were made?
right, yeah,
How do you think Led Zeppelin was made?
yep,
Okay. Dudes looked around and said, "That's the best drummer in this city that I live in. I'm gonna go get him."
yeah,
That's how you ended up with amazing bands, you
yeah,
know? So like anyway, not everybody just ends up like you two, where you just happen to be in high school with the three other guys that
yeah,
are gonna have the right chemistry to make this amazing thing together.
yeah. That's a pretty rare situation, probably. Yeah.
It's a rare situation. Yeah, it's very rare.
So, how did like the rock scene then for you evolve between the late '90s and 2000s? Because you were kind of on the at the end of the '90s when Black Lab, came about,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
in the heart of the 2000s. So,
Yeah, I mean, it was really the heyday of the music business. Like I tell people, after I got my record deal, right? After they'd already signed me, I used to come into LA. I used to fly into LA for some meetings. I hadn't made a record yet. I hadn't made them any money yet. They'd already given me like a $500,000, and there would be a limousine at the airport with my name, and then they would take me to the Four Seasons. Okay, that's not a sustainable business model. I was just a kid who wrote some songs. I hadn't
yeah,
made them a dime. Like, why is there a limo here? You know what I mean? It's crazy. So, but it was funded by this insane, um, everybody was replacing their CD and their LP collection with CDs. So they're
hmm,
literally buying all the music that they bought their whole lives. All the boomers,
yep,
everybody was buying all the music that they bought their whole life again. They're buying it again.
yeah,
In addition to like, there's no streaming, there's nothing like that. You just had the huge 90s boom of the grunge bands and all that stuff. So the record companies just had more money than they knew what to do with. So we got a deal, and it was great. And then it all came to an end.
yeah,
So in the middle of our second single, the chairman of Geffen Records came to me and said, Black Lab is gonna save Geffen Records. And I was like, oh my God. Like, dude, I need you to save me.
yeah,
I can't be, I'm in no position to be
yeah,
saving anybody. Like, this is our first album. I need two, three, four more of these to get going. And so, and then like when I came, so really like that was the, yeah, that was the beginning of the end. And then we heard that like guys were going, our people on the radio staff were going and getting other jobs. So
wow,
it was kind of a brutal time. We sold like 120,000 copies, which was enough that we didn't get dropped, but wasn't enough that we could get the attention of Interscope, who inherited us. So we
okay,
went then to Interscope after Geffen closed, And they had also inherited like U2 and all these huge bands off of Island and A&M and Geffen and all, all these huge bands that are now on Interscope, right? So, um, yeah, then the industry was in collapse. Started. It was just the very beginning. So I went and got another deal with Sony. I got a deal with the guy who signed Dave Matthews at Epic Records. And we made our second album and had a song on the Spider-Man soundtrack. It was going to come out in June. It was going to be the third single. And then Sony fired half of their music business employees,
Wow.
including my A&R guy, my marketing guy, the president of Epic. Everyone who knew who we were got fired.
Jeez.
So I had been smart enough to make my lawyer put it in the deal, in my second deal, because I had so many friends who got screwed by major
Yeah.
labels in the 90s. I had him put in my deal that if they didn't release my second album, they had 6 months to release it. And if they didn't release it, they had to give me $1 million.
Wow.
Or they had to give me my record back.
Yeah.
So they gave me my record back. So now here I am. I'm sitting. I've got an album. It's like a $400,000 album. I've got a song on the Spider-Man soundtrack, and now I own this album. So we looked for another distributor, but the whole industry was in collapse. Rick Rubin actually wanted to sign us, but he wanted to reproduce the album, which I probably should have done. But I had already spent 2 years on the album. I thought, oh my God, if I have to reproduce all these songs, I'm going to shoot myself. So I said no to that. And then I ended up in Montana because my wife had said, hey, you're going on tour this summer with the Spider-Man soundtrack release. I don't want to be living in LA while you're on tour for a year or two. So we'd moved to Montana, some friends there, had a little house there that we live in. Now all of a sudden I'm in Montana. I didn't get the back end of my publishing deal. I didn't get the six-figure back end of my record deal. I have no money and I don't know how to do anything other than like be a musician.
Yeah.
And the only thing I have is this album.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, shit. So my friend Boo knew how to design websites, and she was a graphic designer, and she taught me how to do graphic design. She taught me how to use Photoshop and Illustrator, and she taught me how to build a website. So I built a website, and I was like, I'm just going to go out and get some of the people who bought our debut, one of the millions of people who bought one of these soundtracks we were on a bunch of soundtracks.
Yep.
And if I can just get a few thousand of them to come give me $12 for a CD, I'll send it to them and I'll make enough money to live in Montana, which was a very cheap place to live at the time.
Yeah. Yep. That's
Yeah, so that's what I
true.
did. I got stuck in Montana. I mean, even if I'd wanted to leave, I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. I
Yeah.
had like $0 and I didn't have any income.
Wow. I mean,
So
it's
yeah,
pretty amazing though, and also like the context of that historically with the, rise of the internet. It's, yeah, good on you for being able to take advantage of that.
dude, it was good. It was good because I mean, for 10 years, I sold a lot of CDs, sold a lot of CDs, and I got to keep $10 from every single CD I
Yeah.
sold.
Yeah.
So I did really well. And then we went to downloads, right? Then it was
Yep.
all iTunes downloads. And then I got to keep $7 for every one of those. And I didn't have to like have an assistant to put things in envelopes.
Right. Yeah.
So that was great too. And yeah, so I just stayed in Montana. I built a little studio. It was very undistracting, had a
Yep.
kid, and just, you know, it was a good place for him to grow up. So yeah, just did that thing and worked web marketing, did podcasting at the beginning of podcasting.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. This guy called me. This guy sent me an email. This guy, Neil, he said, hey, can I use your song on a podcast? This was in, I don't know what, 2002,
Yeah.
2003. And I was like, sure, if you tell me what the fuck a podcast is, sure. So he's like, dude, there's a whole world of podcasting going on, and the major labels will not license their music to us. And if you
Yeah.
allow us to use your music, you will rule the school. You will just crush this
Yeah.
whole place because all of the music that we have access to is all very like second rate.
Yep.
And I was like, sure, man, I own everything.
That's
At this
cool.
point, I had like $50,000 worth of studio equipment that my previous labels had bought me. So,
Yeah.
and I knew how to use it. So, and I had great collaborators in LA. So we made records and we put it on podcasts and did all kinds of stuff. So
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
that is pretty amazing. Yeah.
I had a lot more energy then.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds like it. I mean, good grief. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's funny, you mentioned the Spider-Man soundtrack. That's actually when I first discovered you was through the Spider-Man
Okay, the second
soundtrack.
record. Interesting.
I mean, I remember my dad bought that CD because we love the Spider-Man movie. That was like the first superhero movie I really remember. And I
Yeah,
was
dude. Well, it was the first good superhero
Yeah, I
movie,
was like, I mean,
right?
I loved it. I dressed up for Spider-Man for Halloween. I was
Hell
like,
yeah.
yeah, it was big. And
Yeah.
when the soundtrack came out, I know my dad was like, just bought me the CD. And I started listening. We listened to it in his. I still remember. I still remember like vividly, riding in his silver Ford Taurus, listening to the Spider-Man soundtrack
Yeah, man.
on repeat, and your song coming up, and I thought it was just such a great song, Learn to Crawl. And I mean, the soundtrack in general was, I thought, really good. There's so many songs I really enjoyed
Hmm.
on, but
Yeah.
especially your song, which I mean, literally, I remember the soundtrack because of your song, to this day.
Wow.
And
Wow.
like even when I've kind of like lost track of CDs and stuff, I still remembered that particular song, and so I would make sure to put it like on iTunes or other things, and
Oh,
that
cool.
song has stuck with me since then. But I'm curious, how do you go about writing a song for a movie? Like how does that even work?
Well, it's a funny story with Learn to Crawl because we were waiting for our second album to come out. We had made it, it was mastered, it was all good. They were stoked about it. And then Columbia Pictures, or Sony Pictures, whoever, came to us as we were a Sony artist. And they said, hey, would you write a song for Aerosmith? Because Aerosmith is going to have the lead song on the Spider-Man soundtrack, this new movie that's coming out. And we're like, fuck yeah, we could write a Aerosmith song all day long, right? So Andy, my collaborator at the time, we had some loops that we had made with Scotty, our drummer, and he just put one of these loops on and he made a riff, and I was just like, you can laugh, you can feel fine, you can dance with a little twist. And very Steven,
Yeah,
very Aerosmithish,
yeah,
right? So yeah, so we made this song and we brought it back in. We're like, yeah, Aerosmith's gonna do our song. Shit's badass. And we gave it to Sony Pictures and they gave it to Aerosmith and they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it. Steven's like, I can't sing that fast. I was like, what, dude? You sing like Walk This Way. Like, what are you talking about, right? So but then Columbia Pictures came back to us and said, we would like you guys to make a master of the song. We want this song on our soundtrack, right?
wow,
And I was like, we're like, yeah. So basically the song was done. I mean, Andy's a very good engineer. That but we're like, but they gave us a $50,000 budget. And we're like, how are we going to spend $50,000? So we thought of a bunch of gear that we needed to finish the song. And we realized that really we should go to Florida to have Tom Lord Alge mix it because, we needed to be in South Beach, while Tom mixed the record.
yeah,
So we went out to South Beach, we finished the record there, or we finished the whatever few tracks, And then we just hung out in South Beach and went to clubs and like drank on the beach for 3 days while Tom mixed it.
Wow.
And, yeah, we blew through their entire budget and it was quite satisfying.
Yeah.
And because that's like movie money, it's not
Oh,
recoupable.
sure.
It's probably the only money that was ever not recoupable. Anyway, um, and then yeah, they're like, this is going to be the third single on the record, right? So, and it kind of catapulted us into like Sony's priorities in a way that we had not been a priority for them until then. So we were like, hell yeah. And the first single was that big dumb Nickelback song.
Yep.
And then the second single was 311. And the second single was so bad. It was such a terrible song and it performed so poorly that they just decided they're not going to do a third. They gave up on the record.
My gosh.
So our song as a third single was not coming out, and then everybody got fired, and then we got dropped.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Jeez.
But you know, it was great because it forced me to start doing it on my own. And I mean, really, I made more money as an independent artist than I ever did as a major label artist.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's
I mean, I never had big hits as a major label. You
yeah.
know, like you have
Yeah,
big hits, you can go on tour, you can make a lot of money. But
sure.
if you're just kind of drowning in major label debt, you never actually make money. You just get advances, which then you spend
Okay.
being in a band, having musicians, making records, then you spend the advance, and you end up in a bunch of credit card debt because you're like, well, shit, it's time for me to make the next record. I need my next six-figure check. Give me that next six-figure check. Then you get the next six-figure check, you're okay. And then one day, the next six-figure check doesn't come, and then you're screwed.
Yikes. Yeah. That's yeah, definitely pretty tough, tough industry to survive in.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's honestly hard to say whether it was worse then or worse now. It's just a
Yeah,
brutal industry all the way around, you know?
definitely.
Yeah.
Did you have to like do any research for that song in terms of like Spider-Man and like the story or something? Because I know that like you reference like some things in it that are, kind of sound like you knew the Spider-Man,
Oh yeah. We were both huge
yeah.
comic book
Okay.
kids. So and really what we wanted is we wanted to score the scene. Like if you remember that first movie, he's on the roof. He goes up to the roof, right?
Yep.
And he's got like web shooters that for some reason come out of his arms, which is strange but true.
Yeah.
And there's a certain point when he just jumps,
Yes. Yes.
and it's kind of like a leap of faith, literally,
Yep.
because he's figured out. And like we really wanted to score that moment. Like, can you teach me how to fly? Where
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
people and we really that's what we really wanted. We wanted our song to be the song that's playing on the roof when he's figuring out his web shooters and the fact that he can like swing and fly because
Yeah.
we knew it was a nonverbal
Yeah.
scene. He didn't have anybody to talk to, but sadly, the director, I can't remember that fucker's name. He decided I don't want any rock music in my movie.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
I
don't want
mean,
any rock music in my movie. So none of those songs are in the movie,
yes,
you know? Yeah,
that's the thing I was gonna say is that I recently watched that movie again,
yeah,
and it's funny because I remember the soundtrack so well,
yeah,
and your song that I forgotten that it wasn't in the film, and so I was
yeah.
expecting your song to play at some point during
No,
the
it's not in
movie.
the film.
I'm like, wait
It's
a minute, the
all the
soundtrack
all the
actually
songs.
isn't in the movie.
It's all the songs are inspired by the film. And
Yeah,
you know, I love Danny Elfman. I'm the biggest Oingo Boingo fan in the world,
yeah,
and I love his scores. But when you watch that movie, the score is very tiresome
yeah,
because his style is very busy, which is fantastic when the score is offset by some like dumber shit, like our song, right?
hmm
Like give us a big dumb rock song, dude. But when it's just all symphonic score for the
Yeah.
whole movie,
Yeah.
it's just very tiresome. And there's never that like punch you in the face moment, you know,
Yeah.
so that rock music can bring. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's
I
my opinion.
mean, I definitely, yeah, agree that it would have, I mean, the movie's great, but it would have been even better if it had your music in it. Because I mean, I could just imagine that scene that you were describing, and like I could imagine myself watching that movie for the first time in theaters as a kid, and like having the hair on
Hmm.
my back of my neck stand up from hearing that
Yeah.
sound and that music behind it, behind that scene. So
Yeah.
would have been cool.
Yeah.
So,
It would have been cool. It would have been cool.
but it would have been so cool that I thought that it was in the movie. So I
I know. It's
reimagined the
funny.
film.
It's funny. None of those songs are in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
Like the movie ends, and I mean, ironically, it ends and it goes into the old Spider-Man theme by Aerosmith. Spider-Man,
yes,
Spider-Man does
yes,
whatever a spider can, which is really one of the shittiest
yeah,
ass pieces of music ever written on the planet. It's
yeah,
an irredeemable composition. Like Spider-Man or Led Zeppelin, you
yeah.
know, God himself could not make that song sound good.
No, that's
So you have a whole movie with no rock music, and then you go right into this absolute piece of garbage. And
yeah,
then I think the second song is like the Nickelback song or whatever, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's yeah, pretty. Yeah, that Spider-Man theme song's pretty dated. I don't know when that came out or when that was originally written, but certainly not
no,
in the era that film had come out in. So
no, it's like a terrible 70s TV theme.
yeah,
Probably
exactly. Yeah,
somebody got paid $150 in 1974 to write that song, you know.
yeah, definitely. Um, you know, thinking about songwriting, then obviously the world is quite different now than it was when you were, writing music back in the 2000s.
Yeah.
What do you think about the future of songwriting with like AI and everything?
Um,
Do you think that's could be like a trend where people are just using AI to write songs for them, or
I don't know. It's interesting because I went to ChatGPT and I said, write a song in the style of Paul Durham from Black Lab. And it gave me a song that was so terrible. And I could recognize myself in it, but only in the worst ways.
okay,
It took everything that's bad about my songwriting, everything that's maudlin, sentimental, lazy, every bad piece of writing that I've ever done. It's like it took that and it extracted it and then it spit it out in an even worse version than I would have done it, you know?
yeah,
So partly I was horrified and partly I was relieved because I was like, oh yeah, this
okay,
shit can't do what I do yet.
okay, yeah,
And then I went and said, give me a song in the style of Bob Dylan. And it did the same thing. It gave me the worst absolute piece of crap song. So I was like, okay, well, they can't do, but they will get there.
yeah,
They will get to the
yeah,
point where it's something. And then people are just gonna have to decide. We're all going to have to decide. Do I want something made by a human or do I want something made by a machine? Because the machine can emulate something made by a human very well,
yeah,
very well, to the point where you can't tell the difference, just like you can't tell the difference when you're chatting with ChatGPT. You know, there's a Google engineer, and this is 5 years ago. He was 100% convinced that their large language model AI was sentient.
yeah. I remember when that came out. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, he got fired from Google and he took his salary and he went out and hired a lawyer to represent the large language model
yeah,
because he's like, no, 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 no. So he was convinced,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
AI can pass the Turing test 100%. You know, AI can convince you that there's a human on the other end of that. So how long is it going to be before they can actually convince you that this is a rock band? I mean, apparently Spotify is flooding their streams with tracks that they generate via AI. is they
Wow.
own those
Yeah.
tracks and they don't have to pay royalties on them. I mean, mostly it's like, instrumental, chill out kind of shit, right? That
Sure.
nobody's really listening, nobody's paying that much attention to anyway. But it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better.
Yeah.
There's stuff that's coming that is gonna be way beyond. So I don't
Definitely.
know. I think it's just, I mean, in a way, this is why I just this is why I'm just grateful for the personal connection that I have with my fans.
Hmm.
I have a very small, very passionate fan base, and they're interested in me and my life.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in their lives. So like we just have a really good relationship where when I release a song, I can feel their interest in the personal origins and just the fact that the song came from me and not
Hmm.
like an excellent AI emulation of
All
me.
right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's gonna be the big thing that I guess will be the necessity for, you know, going through the AI future that we
Yeah.
have in store is the human connection and that relatableness to another human being,
Yep.
that can relate to what you're going through in your life that the machine will never fully understand. It can pretend it does, but yeah, it
It
won't.
can pretend that
Yeah,
it does.
yeah,
It can pretend that it does. And maybe someday we'll get to the point where the machine is actually conscious and the machine is
yeah,
having experiences. And then that might be interesting because if the
yeah.
machine is conscious, then its experiences might be very interesting.
Definitely,
But
definitely.
but as long as the machine is simply emulating um patterns
Hmm.
that it has detected in a certain writer or a certain genre, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think that's good, you know?
right. No, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, Um, it'll be interesting to see because I know that, ChatGPT has only been out a few years. And I just imagine, given how much people are already using it, think 50 years from now, that's insane. Just insane to
Dude,
imagine. Yeah.
dude, it's all coming to an end.
Yeah.
People don't understand. Like people
Yeah.
are diagnosing themselves
Yeah.
on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is doing a better job than their doctors are.
Yeah. I've heard about that coming out. Yeah.
So,
It's,
like you got 10 years and $300,000 worth of medical school training, and now this free, you know, machine learning model is going to replace you.
it's going to be, yeah, it's going
What
to
are we
be,
all going to do? What
I
are we
don't
all
know.
going to do for work? We should all go become plumbers like tomorrow because
Well, yeah,
ChatGPT cannot make your shit, flow downhill.
right. Until they insert like ChatGPT into some type of humanoid robot that
Yeah.
functions like a person,
Yes.
that'll be the
Oh,
next step.
yes. Of course. And I'm sure everyone's going to trust Elon Musk to provide them with excellent
I'm sure.
humanoid
Only the
robots to
best, I'm
live
sure.
in their homes.
That's right. That sounds great.
Oh,
Yeah. We'll
yeah,
force you to watch like Elon Musk highlights every day, probably.
totally. You can do a little Nazi salute for you.
um, yeah,
Mm.
it's funny. I talked to someone a couple years ago who makes robots and tries to like create the facial features, and he was talking about the process of just putting Chat GPT like software into them, and so they can interact with
Mhm.
people and talk, and
Yeah,
pretty
man.
spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's
It's spooky. I mean, and it's ironic with Tesla because in a way, Tesla is the AI leader.
yeah,
Tesla is the AI that's out there driving cars.
yep,
And
yeah.
they're building like a supercomputer that is beyond what anybody else has. So it's gonna make total sense to like put that in intellectual property right into those robots. So it's coming. It's coming. So it's coming, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. So I don't know.
Just have to
I don't
figure
know what
out
to
what the
tell you.
new world is.
Be creative. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Find find the thing you love to do. I don't know what else there is to do. Like you can't compete in a way. None of us can compete. So if you can't
Yeah.
compete, what can you do? You can just enjoy your life and find the thing that you want to do and then commit to that thing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's definitely gets into the philosophical aspect of what everyone has to kind of determine for themselves. Like, what's going to be
Yep,
the meaning of your life, and you're gonna have to be okay with
yep,
of coming up with something. So,
yep.
but
Oh
we'll hope
man.
for the best. And in the mean,
Totally.
in the meantime, though, what do you think is like the legacy of 2000s music compared to the other eras of music history?
Well, people talk a lot of shit about the music that's being made now, but I actually see like the songwriters that are working now, like, Billie Eilish and her brother, um, who's ever writing, uh, oh my God, I can see her face. Anyway, the songwriters that are working now are on some levels distilling some of the principles that have been developed over the last 50 years of pop music into this, like, you know f- it's like the freebase of music, you know. um at the same time, I don't know that people are connecting with what artists do now in terms of songs the
Yeah,
way they connected with songs in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. People aren't relating to albums now. It used to be like an album. It used to be like Dark Side of the Moon. It'd be like, Echo and the Bunnymen, like Porcupine, or, Fables of the Reconstruction or War. Like, these are albums. These are like these archetypal, they're not like a collection of short stories. They're like novels.
yeah.
You relate to them almost as a whole, uh, as somebody who listened to them, on cassette,
Yep. Yeah.
where it just started from one and it went to the end. And or CD. So it wasn't like the skipping around. It wasn't playlists. It wasn't um it wasn't just like Pandora Radio where you put a song in and then you get songs that are like that song back. It wasn't like a vibe. It
Yes.
was like
Yeah.
a particular work that you sunk deeply down into. And I don't know. I don't know how people are going to relate to. I don't know. I don't know what the legacy is. I'm really curious. My son's 20 years old, and like, you know, all children, as a rule, should listen to music that upsets their parents and that their
Yeah.
parents hate. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with that, man. I mean, like death metal, like hardcore punk, like, you know, K-pop, hip hop. What are you going to listen to that's going to upset me? Well,
Yeah.
you listen to video game music. So
Yeah.
it's the only kind of music that could upset me. And it does. It upsets me. It upsets me that, you know, he listens to it. I'm like, here's some Aphex Twin. Check this out, man. It's like electronica,
Yeah.
like this other music. And he just looks at me, so he has done his job as a teenager to find music that upsets his father. I, 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 I was going to say I condemn him, but that's not the right word. What's the right word? It's like I congratulate him. It's not the right word either. But anyway, um, can't remember your question. Sorry.
No, no. I mean, I was just, we're talking about the legacy of music in 2000 and stuff, and compared to everything,
Yeah.
all the other decades. I mean, I feel like, I do think you're onto something when it comes to the music of today is a little bit different. And, I always felt like, especially growing up and still to this day, that whenever I'm looking for music, I want music that feels like it's going to be like the soundtrack of my life, like another part of that
Right.
soundtrack of my life where I can do something that music is like,
Yep.
you know, it's becoming a part of me kind of in my life.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of songs that come out today that are just kind of copy paste and similar and
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, maybe it's kind of, it can be fun to listen to, but you're not really remembering it or relating to it in a way that it sticks around after a couple years when a new song comes out. That's the new
Yeah.
latest, popular song.
Yeah. It's funny because like I'll see a trending video on Instagram and the music will be very compelling, and I'll go listen to the song, and like the song is not very good.
Yeah.
There's no there there. Um, there's just that one segment combined with something kind of addictive visually, right?
Hmm.
And you put those two things together and you get a meme or you get a a TikTok. And that's a different art form than a
Yeah.
song. And it's certainly a different art form than an album.
Yep.
And yeah, I still like albums, I still like the idea that I'm gonna write an album, I'm gonna put out a new Black Lab album, and that it's going to be a cohesive piece of work that represents a certain amount of time. It represents the time before I wrote it and the time when I was writing it and then the time when I recorded it. And it's going to be like this kind of bookended record. And I know it's very archaic and everyone says don't do it, but I don't know. I have wonderful, incredible fans who support me
Yeah.
to just kind of do my thing. And so I just feel like as long as I have people who are literally paying me to help me uh through my Patreon especially to do my thing, then I'm kind of like on the hook for doing my thing,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Like that's why they send me money is so that I can do my thing. So I'm
Be
just gonna
you.
make an
Yeah.
album. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
No,
It's really
that's
great.
super cool. It's definitely the ideal thing. Who wouldn't want to just be able to be themselves and make
Yep.
their life about being themselves. So that's great.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I think that the other thing that appears to me is just that the genres of music seem to be blending more and more, where the distinctiveness between the genres seems to be kind of dissipating over time.
Mhm.
You know,
That's true.
I think the biggest one for me, especially coming out of the Midwest, is how country music's become like rock music with a country accent.
Or
And
hip hop.
yeah, or hip hop. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you got like, and people just transition right into country music, and they're still kind of doing what they used to do, but with like this different edge, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
It is.
Very, it's very interesting, but it's also interesting me that there's no more rock bands in a way.
It's
I mean, I guess there's Coldplay. I don't know. I,
I mean,
I don't even know. I mean,
yeah,
Radiohead doesn't make records anymore. Like nobody that I care about makes records anymore.
yeah.
So,
I mean,
um,
yeah. If they were a rock band, they've kind of a lot have moved into pop, or they're a rock band that started when the rock era was still there. So
exactly,
it's different.
exactly. They're just kind of a legacy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It is. It is funny how the genres are blending. Um, I mean, it's just like everything else, man. Everything else just mashed together.
yep.
Everything else just mashed together, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, living here in Mexico, I see it so much about how like young Mexican kids just are adopting American culture and or adopting culture from all over the world. I mean, you got Human Hanuman Kind, this Indian rapper who's like, I mean, that Big Dogs track he's got, it's the most one of the most devastating pieces of hip hop album the last year. And he's a straight up Indian dude
Yeah.
from India, and that's what he's got going on in his
Yep.
video that everybody loves. It's incredible, incredible. So
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely seeing kind of the next era of globalization when it comes to all
yeah,
these different ideas and cultures blending through the internet. Um,
yep,
so it is very interesting to see how it continues to develop. And
yeah,
People are getting exposed to a lot of different things now. It's an interesting world.
Yeah, I mean, so I work with a nonprofit that mentors young Native American artists,
Nice.
and um, my friend Lori, who runs the nonprofit, she's like, she asked me to be kind of the main mentor because I've been mentoring young artists for a long time, and she and I are old rock guy. We're old rock people. She was in a rock band in the 80s,
Wow.
and her husband, for whom the nonprofit is in memory of, also, he was a drummer in Morphine and,
Okay.
many kind of great 80s, 90s, and 2000s bands. And so we're like, okay, we're gonna find, to honor Billy's memory, we're going to find some young Native American musical artists and like do what we can to support them and mentor them and help them break through. And every single application we got was a hip hop artist.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, these Native kids are making incredible hip hop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, which totally makes sense if you think about it in terms of the language of, you know, uh, like the underclass, of the
Hmm.
oppressed, of people who are like in resistance. Like it makes sense to borrow that language because that is
Yeah.
like hip hop represents the language of resistance to you know class oppression, racial oppression. So for them to borrow that form and be so good at it, it's just amazing. So
Yeah.
it's it's pretty entertaining just to sit back and watch it.
No, yeah, definitely. That definitely is. It's cool to see all the new developments that come out of this world where we're all connected and
Yeah.
people are
Yeah, and
getting yeah,
people should go check out Foreshadow. He's
foreshadow. Okay.
Foreshadow. He's just he's awesome. He's
Yeah.
awesome. I've been working with him for the last year and super proud of the record he just finished. So.
Perfect. No, that sounds great. Definitely. So what are you currently working on then?
Well, I had to get out of the US, so I did that. And I came down here, and my goal was to do nothing,
Okay.
which I was partially successful at for about 3 months.
Yep.
And now the doing nothing has kind of had its effect. And now I'm super energized and have all these ideas. And you know, all my collaborators are in the US. So I'm coming back to the US, gonna see my kid for his birthday, and then probably spend the summer up there. Very hot down here in the summer, so
Yeah.
I guess I'll come back in the winter. But uh I'm just super stoked to make a new record, man. I'm
Yeah.
just stoked to make a big rock, a big Black Lab pop album.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm stoked about the guys that I have lined up to work on it with me. And um I have a million musical ideas, and I just have, I made a solo album that was very kind of rooted in like folk and blues and grief. And I'm just kind of like through that now,
Hmm.
and I'm just ready to rock.
Yeah. No, it's something to look forward to. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what's the best way for people that aren't familiar with you to follow you and keep track of everything going on your future records? So,
Blacklabworld.com is pretty current.
yep,
Or at Instagram, Paul Blacklab.
perfect.
And yeah, just sign up on the email list or check us out at Spotify. I just noticed today we have 90,000 monthly listeners, which is pretty awesome. That's
Yeah,
just at
that's great.
Spotify, let alone other platforms. So yeah, I feel like I feel like it's all starting to wake up again. I actually feel like young people are really interested in song-based music. I feel like culture goes through cycles.
Yep.
And as much as people might be just interested in a 20-second splice, eventually they're going to want something deeper. And that's the business that I'm in. So
Definitely. Cool. Well, thank you so
cool.
much for, coming on and sharing your story. And, I appreciate the music you've made that's impacted my life and plenty of
Thank you,
others.
man.
So
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much. Awesome.